Welcome to the Making Sense of Politics podcast with Kate and Nancy. Welcome to another episode of the Making Sense of Politics podcast with me, Kate Carruthers.
And me, Nancy Georges from the UK. Hi.
It's great to see you, Nancy. How are things over there? How's the weather?
Kate, it's been sunny every day. It's supposed to rain today or tomorrow, but 2 weeks of sun, I can't complain. Bitterly, freezingly cold, but Sydney's still warmer than the UK, so all good. How's it with you?
Well, up at my place, it's been raining all week, so You've had better weather than me.
Honestly, we really have. I hope my plants are getting watered. Thanks, Rain.
Oh, well, I have no idea what's happening in other parts of Sydney. I drove like 20 minutes down the road the other day and it wasn't raining, so I don't know. Anyway, so we had the election while you've been away.
You know, it's actually getting news here. So I spent £4 on the Saturday paper, Kate, and £4.50.
Wow.
That's $9. Like I spent $18 on two papers, but I wanted to catch up. But it's getting a lot of news here, and the fact that it's an anti-Trump vote, that's what it's being portrayed as here and in the US. So it's been really interesting watching it from the UK perspective and then plugging into our Australian news and getting info from you about what's happening on the ground roots. Huge. How was it being there? Amazing.
Well, it was such a strange thing because I didn't watch anything because I didn't want to because I was too nervous.
Yeah.
So it was a big surprise for me, but I had friends that were messaging me through the day and telling me through the evening and telling me what was going on. And it became pretty apparent fairly early that it was going to be an interesting result that we hadn't predicted.
Yeah. We woke up to it, so we didn't have all that lead up, but I did have all the messages coming through from everybody. Oh my God, are you like, and thankfully I was asleep because I don't think my heart couldn't bear it when I knew the answer. Huge.
Yeah. But it was utterly hilarious to see Dutton lose his seat. That was the cherry on top for me. Because, anyway, but let's get into it.
We're at the sliding doors moment, Kate. Like we could have gone that way and we went this way, right? Yeah, let's go.
And we might have, might have even set the sort of agenda for Australia for like the next decade, maybe.
I feel.
It's interesting.
I hope
So of the things that we've seen, and I'm sorry, I'm the one that put this together because Nancy's been travelling, so I'm to blame for this one.
No, I was going to thank you for everything that you've been doing while I've been not as plugged in as I thought. So much appreciated. This is amazing.
So I want to take this opportunity to tell everybody in the Liberal Party that I told several years ago when he was elected, he was made leader. I told you he was unelectable. And he was. I'm really glad everybody else thought so too, though. But I just love this message on Blue Sky that pointed out all the times he'd relaunched himself with his softer side, and it still didn't help, which I am gloating slightly.
But well, this is one of the questions I wanted to ask you because you're far more. You've got a bigger history. Like Gina Rinehart, even after the election, comes out and says, we still need to follow what Trump's doing. She was on the same path. So what echo chamber, I suppose we're going to talk about this further on, but are they absolutely just listening? Are they in the same room listening to the same things since 2017? Are they getting
pretty much, and we've all seen those pictures of Gina at Mar-a-Lago, so she's in those circles too.
Yeah.
So she's not getting much outside input, and if she was getting outside input, she would just fire the person.
Yeah.
So she's not really open to hearing other people's perspectives, I don't believe.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting. So as the night wore on, there was this from Mark Riley, who's a really reasonable middle of the road reporter. He's not, he's never been one to go for one side or the other, but I think, he characterized it as a catastrophic defeat.
Yeah.
And I really think that it was the combination of Dutton and the nuclear stuff that really did for him, but also the social media campaign was so lame. I have not had time to pull together some stuff, but maybe we'll do it in the next episode, and we can look at the lameness of the social media campaign from both the major parties, because
Yes.
it was really, really bad.
Yeah. But you're exact. So that was my observation from here. That sort of last week really, where I was like, why aren't you giving it a put? Why aren't you saying what we're all saying? Because so many people were saying what the government should have been saying for themselves, let alone. But I felt like he was sort of ringing it in at the end, Albanese, and Dutton gave up. Like it was like,
Well,
price has gone MAGA, 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 and we're gone.
I might have some insight into how things are on the Liberal side of things. I ran the social media campaign for a council election in northern Sydney for the Liberals a couple of years ago, and I will tell you that dealing with HQ, as they call it, was the most mind-numbing experience of my life, and I swore I would never do it again. And they wanted to approve every single tweet, every single Instagram message before it went out. And it was like, literally, are you crazy? And they didn't understand it, and they didn't have any people in there that you could talk to that did understand it. So it was like talking in Swahili to a bunch of people from America. It was really, really strange. And so, I'm assuming it's got no better.
Yeah. It's also, I feel like it's like they're still in PR mode. Like that's what we did back in PR days, right? Where the client had to approve everything we wrote before we sent it out. But social isn't like that. And because they don't have a culture and they don't have confidence in the people that work for them or with them, they can't release that and give that trust away.
Yeah. And interestingly, I was observing a number of the Teals, some of the newer ones, and they also had awful, very stilted social media campaigns. So they were really interesting to see. But I think it looks like all the Gen Xers and above don't get social, don't understand how to operate in the social context. So they need help. They can call us. We can help.
Well, we spoke about that, didn't we? Where I said to you, I feel like they're all broadcasting, not communicating or engaging. And that's, I mean, we're of that age group and we get it. You just need people who understand it. But they're not even, like I gave a few suggestions to a few people and they ignored it. And then I think I shared with you a message. It would be great if you liked and shared because this helps the algorithm 3 days before the election.
Yeah, too late. Too little, too late.
Yeah. So, yeah, I agree. I think
and a deep misunderstanding of how the algorithm works.
Right. But that's all they hear, right? They go, somebody said algorithm, so I'm going to go, no comment. But I found this particularly, this was the first thing I read. This was the first thing I saw, on Blue Sky after the win. And the looks on Hume and, was it Cash? Michaela Cash and Jane Hume.
Yeah.
The looks on their faces, even they who lie and push against everything had nothing to say.
Oh, no, didn't they say we've got to wait for the postal votes?
Sorry, she said reading the entrails. We can't start to read the entrails before. But when he was doing his thing, they were just...
They were looking down, I remember, yeah. Well, everybody looked shell-shocked. I don't think they thought it would be that bad. I didn't think it would be that bad. So, it was a surprise to me.
Yeah.
But, yeah, it was fascinating to watch all of their faces.
Satisfying.
And
yes, what next?
So the big question for the Liberal Party is what next? I like this Blue Sky because it puts the 2022 election loss from Scott Morrison beside the Dutton one. And they both said we need a sweeping reset, we need to do this and we need to do that. And I wonder if that thing that you were sort of alluding to with Gina and the echo chamber means that they've driven all the moderates out of the party. They've lost a lot of moderates now. So, they used to have people in Parliament who were moderates, who were at least moderate voices. So a lot of them have gone. So now I think that they will take, again, the exact wrong lesson from this and probably do the same thing that they did before. And I've actually dug out the 2022 election review, and it was a comprehensive review, and it was actually done by Brian Loughnane and Jane Hume, and it was a very comprehensive review. Yeah. And hilariously, the page for the review of the 2022 federal election is still up on the Liberal website, but when you click to go to the report, it shows you a 404 error, so it shows you a page not found error. However, there is a link there on that slide that shows the link to the document that is still up there. They just haven't taken it down, so you can download it and have a look if you want to. But the thing is, the review told us all of the things that they know were wrong. No women. Basically, I sum it up as a bit too MAGA. They've moved too far away from the centre. So, in Australia, we tend to cluster around the centre. The electorate seems to skew centre right. And if you stick to that spot, you can govern. And if you go too far left and too far right, you don't win. That's how it works. So that's pretty much, they didn't listen in 2022. So they chose Dutton, very hardline right winger. He put forward that ludicrous nuclear plan. So my bet is they're not going to listen again.
I think the fact that they put so many untruths out there. What did alternative facts? Is that what Kaylee Conway called it in the US? I feel like the way that they conducted themselves and the lies and the propaganda and the bullying that they did campaigning just showed that they lacked policy, they lacked direction, they lacked ideas, they don't have a vision for their future because they couldn't communicate it to anyone. So for my thing is, like, I feel like they're going to keep putting themselves into oblivion the further they get away from the centre. So then that leaves us with Labor just doing whatever the heck they want. Because I personally don't feel Labor won. I feel the Libs lost.
Yeah, I feel that very much so. And, I can remember walking along the Cooks River with my brother, who's a member of the Labor Party, and talking about the election loss and just saying the Liberals need to find a vision.
Yeah.
They need to be able to articulate what is their vision for the future. They don't have one. What kind of Australia do they want to build? Yeah. They want to say no to everything. If they just want to say no to the voice, no to gay marriage, no to this, no to that, they're the party of no. So what is their positive vision for the future? They don't have one.
No. Last night we caught up with family. We're in Worcester at the moment, and hung out with the 40-year-olds, the 40-year-old English people. The early 40s, felt very young. And it's so funny, right? Because I would never have spoken about politics before, ever. And B, probably they wouldn't have. And we were talking about how we are all, like, so they were like, I probably, they're coming up to their election. Labor is messing it up hugely. After 14 years, yes. Awful Conservative Party, Labor still don't know what they're supposed to promise or do. And I said to him, look, because he said, I don't want to pick a political party. I want to pick people. This is what this 42-year-old pub owner has owned a pub for 20 years. And I said to him, you know what I want? I want everybody to be looked after, the vulnerable to be looked after. I want to pay adequate taxes. I want corporates and big companies to pay their proper taxes. And I want the government to care about people, not themselves. And he said, that's exactly. And he said, and you know what somebody's going to call you? Woke. And it's so interesting because he said, we didn't talk about party politics. We didn't talk about which side or which side we were on. We're talking about the results now. And I think that's where, like, you look at, like, you and your brother, right? Like, you actually, we're talking about the same thing, regardless of what party we're supporting. But the political parties don't seem to have caught up with that zeitgeist. And here, they're all voting for reform, Kate.
I know,
Nigel
I saw
Farage,
that.
who sold them Brexit, then left the country and left them in the big poo-poo hole that they're in with, cut off from Europe. They're voting for him because they don't see any other choice. Because he told us he was going to do all these things, lower the taxes, increase the market. I said, but he's not going to do it. He's already shown you that he can talk and not deliver. But he said, who else are we going to vote for? This is what this guy said.
Yeah. Well, the thing that I was saying the other day to a friend in the UK was the best thing they can do to reform is give them local council to run, because local councils, you've got to do stuff. And by the time the next election comes around, they'll have either delivered stuff or have not delivered stuff. Because, they don't have the state, federal, local thing that we have. They just have national government and local government. So they don't have the same levels. So the councils do a lot more heavy lifting. The councils do a lot of the stuff that the states here do.
Yeah. Can we do a podcast on are we overgoverned one day?
Sure. Well, one of the things I always said that the states were unnecessary, but they saved our bacon during COVID, and now I'm a lot more in favour of states than I ever was, because if Scott Morrison hadn't had the premiers under him saying no, he would have done what he wanted, and that would have been an utter disaster for the country, I believe.
I agree. But I don't think we need councils. In this day of tech, digital, able to sort of cluster sort of things, state government should be able to look up. We're not that big a population that they can, I suppose New South Wales, Victoria are, but I feel like we continually find things locally that council goes, oh, well, state won't do that. And then state goes, oh, council won't do that. And they both won't do anything. So we find locally we have a big, big problem. And we're paying for them all, right? We want to save money, don't we?
Well, part of the problem is the scale. So, I've worked for state government. So state government can do things that federal government can't and isn't set up for, but local government can do things that state's not set up for. So it's a really interesting challenge. And it's really interesting. So Rory Stewart from the Rest is Politics UK podcast, he's been talking a lot about, citizens' assemblies and stuff. Yeah. And I think we need to think about some different kind of approaches to enacting democracy in our countries, to cut through some of that stuff. And I think it'd be really interesting to kind of explore that.
That's smart, Kate. Yeah, that's because I think, you know what? Nothing is unchangeable in this day and age. The world as we know it is different. It'll always be different to what it was yesterday. So why can't we do some clever thinking? Wouldn't it be great if we could get him on and have a chat?
That would be fabulous.
That's going to be my 12-month mission. Rory Stewart, you're going to be chatting to us in less than 12 months.
Excellent. So the other thing that comes to mind is Estonia has been doing e-government for years, and they've got a really sophisticated way of doing it that really inspired Victor Dominello when he set up Service New South Wales, which is a joy to my life. Service New South Wales, I love you, shout out to you. And, so we know that government can do better because we've seen Service New South Wales and it's cut all the bullshit, all the red tape, or a lot of the red tape that we used to have to go to. We used to have to go to all those separate agencies. Now you just walk into a Service New South Wales office and you can just sort it out there. And a lot of the time I just do stuff on my phone. So we can use technology, but we need ministers like Dominello who have a vision for it, a positive vision for the future. So this is the thing that I think that, the Liberals weren't able to articulate a vision for the future. They didn't have any policies that I could detect apart from nuclear. Angus
Which
Taylor
wasn't a policy, really,
didn't
wasn't it?
seem to, yeah, he didn't seem to be able to prosecute his ideas about what we would do with Australia's finances and stuff. So I think that, and Labor didn't really articulate a vision for the future, but at least they have more of one than the Liberals. So
I
it's
think
kind of a
also
sad
Labor are
place to
more
be.
Labor will react more to the most what people want. So when we protest and when we make our voice heard, Labor is smart enough to go, okay, we need to address this. But we still need to drive that a little bit with them. Whereas the Liberals, it just seems like deaf ears, right? It's just they just don't care. But the other, I think this idea about ego. So I am tech. I consider myself to be techie literate, and my bricky hubby is not very. But he was during COVID. He fell in love with that Service New South Wales app. He now comes to me and goes, well, what are you doing that on the computer for? You could do it. Like, he's like the Service New South Wales rep. And he tells everybody, he'll say to somebody, did you know? But a friend of mine was here from the US, and he's an Aussie, and his folks are in their 80s. And his mum was like, oh, Nancy, go into Service New South Wales and you've got to show them your electricity bill. And I was like, what are you talking about? So, it's so great to see that people are really engaging with the change, because sometimes we see great things come from government and people don't use it, so it gets lost. So yeah, shout out to Victor. We should put him on our
We should get him on. I'll get him on.
Yeah, he really pushed poo in a barrel up a hill, didn't he?
And he took that with him. He took that with him whichever ministry he went to.
Yeah.
So he was really passionate about it, and that's, so there is a Liberal minister who had a positive vision for change in a government that had a positive vision for change. They wanted to change our transport landscape. They wanted to change our financial landscape in New South Wales. They had a really positive agenda. So it's not that the Liberals can't do that. They have at the state level, just not for a very long time at the federal level.
Yeah. Well,
yeah, it's interesting.
Has Malcolm Turnbull ever been more popular?
I know. And who could have predicted that? I didn't have that on my bingo card for this year. Anyway, so then the next thing that I wanted to mention was, are the Libs going MAGA? So Pat Karvelas,
oh, Kate, I can't hear you. No, I can't hear you. Now you're gone. You're back.
right, hopefully I'm back.
Yes, you're back now.
I don't know what happened. Anyway,
Pat Karvelas.
So Pat Karvelas, she was talking about Jacinta Price defecting from the Nationals to sit in the Liberal Party room where she's going to run as Deputy Liberal Leader. Now, this is particularly funny for me because by doing that, she's actually made the Nationals lose funding. So by doing that, she has reduced the number of members that they have so that they now don't get big party funding. So that's very funny.
They seem to be, but she's not ideologically aligned then, is she? She's out for herself.
Well, she says that she has always been a Liberal at heart, and she's, now she's found her proper home because she was part of the Country Liberal Party. It was kind of a mashup of the two. So she could have always sat in either party room, but she's now gone with the Liberals and has really set a cat amongst the pigeons. I don't think the Nationals are going to forgive her very quickly, but we all saw that picture that we shared in our last episode where she had the MAGA hat on and she was full on MAGA. So, is this part of the big Liberal shift towards being a MAGA sort of party?
But she was, just before the election, she was doing the Make Australia Great Again. And you could see Dutton he turned to stone, like it was biblical. He literally went, like they are doing it, but they don't want to say they're doing it really. Whereas she sort of said the quiet bit out loud. She's very loose cannon, isn't she? I hate that the women seem to be the ones that go off track. Like you just look like
There's
Lydia
plenty of men
Thorpe.
going off track too.
Yeah, plenty more, but girls, keep it together. But yeah, she's just. I feel like she has no center anyway. She's literally, where can I get what I want for myself?
Which is very MAGA.
Very mega.
So,
Very mega. Or very liberal now, can we say?
well, so I think that this is a very real thing that may be the direction they're going in, and I think people like Gina Reinhart will support it. So, I think that there are a lot of people who will like that, and so I see this will be part of the continual pushing out of the moderate voices. So I think, realistically, the Teals need to just get their act together and form an actual party.
I wanted to. So my hubby actually asked me this question. He said, can you ask Kate? Um, so can the independents, community independents, create a party of community independents?
Anyone can.
So to me, it makes
Jackie,
sense,
that's
right?
how
If I
Jackie
represent,
Lambie did it. Jackie Lambie
yeah,
just
correct,
invented her
correct,
Jackie Lambie Network Party. You got to get a certain number of signatures to create it, decide your colours, decide your logo, and you're off. So, that they haven't done that at the moment, because the minute you start to do that, you need to have joint policy.
yeah,
So
that's
they
yeah,
haven't wanted to have that conversation, but I think that there is a really big gap in the market between Labor and Liberal for a centre-right party, and it could be the Teals.
they basically want what is good for the community, which is what is good for all of us, right? Tax
Mm,
reform, good climate, good wages, minimum wage. Like none of them have said anything or asked for anything that we've all gone, oh my God, she wants to pluck chickens in the middle of the street. Like there
yeah.
hasn't been anything. So do you know what I mean? Like how some things that the others say, you just go, on what planet? But none of the Teals have said anything. The community independents, sorry, have said anything so outrageous that you just go, how is she? How is that person even in there? You know, because
People
I
will
was.
know what you mean if you say Teals, though.
Yeah, I know, but we need to. They're community independent. Well, ironically, they'll probably create the Teals Party, but I think because that's what I've been sort of trying to say to people locally as well on our part. When you think of them as a community independent, it really tells you what they're doing.
Mm.
They really are representing where they come from and what people who, and obviously different areas want different things, but I think fundamentally we all want the same thing, really. We're just,
Well,
unless you're a corporate or a CEO or fossil fuel company or American.
well, like, so there's this portion of people who really want MAGA like things. So, I think we need to just put them aside. The rest of us,
Yeah,
I think a whole lot of people voted Labor this time because they didn't want the alternative. But
yeah.
I think the big story with this is, if it hadn't been Dutton, would it have been such a big swing? I suspect not.
I agree.
He is
I
just
agree.
unelectable. I did say that several years ago. Anyway.
Yeah, but I think you and I are quite in tune with what people are really like. But when you see people who aren't in tune what people are like say that about him, you know that he's really not there.
Mm,
You know?
yeah. So this might be the new dawn for the Liberals. This is the star duo who have joined up now to run for the leadership. So Angus, good job, Angus. Angus Taylor and Jacinta Price, and they did this little love-in on video. I thought it was AI generated. I couldn't believe it. And I searched and found it, and I was like, oh my God, it's real.
We'll share it. We'll share it. Oh my God. That's how, like, it's embarrassing. It's embarrassing. It's embarrassing that these are Australians. Who are they
So
talking to?
they were just talking to each other.
Yeah, but they feel like somebody's going to watch this and go, oh my God, you two are such leaders. They're the two weakest people. Well, yeah, they probably will get elected then.
Well, this is the thing. The way the party is going, they are like they like Jacinta. They think Angus is a nice chap. So, they are viable contenders. And if you think about who the alternatives are,
yeah.
So I don't know. And I think also I don't think the Liberal Party would want Jacinta as the lead candidate, but they're happy to have her subordinate to a man.
Well, that's the deal they made with her, right? That they must have made her some pretty good deal for her to do what she did. But yeah, of course, woman can't be a leader.
No, we wouldn't want women to be leader in the Liberal Party. That'd be terrible.
And people
so
like
terrible. Gladys Berejiklian, she was so terrible. She was so terrible and so competent that when she left, people were like, "Oh, I know she was slightly corrupt, but it was just a boyfriend thing. She was so competent, we liked her."
That broke my heart. Gladys, Gladys' situation.
I know. It was so sad. Anyway, so this is the new dawn for the Liberals. I think it's just going to be fascinating to watch, and there probably isn't enough popcorn in the world for it. So
it's just like, imagine what students are going to study in 50 years' time about this time.
Oh, who can predict? I don't. Hey, but I think we should stop talking about the Liberals, because there were other people in the election, other parties.
Yes.
So the Greens. So you asked me, are the Greens dead, when we were chatting the other day, and we've seen the wash up of it now. Definitely in the lower house, they are no longer a force, but they're still pretty big in the Senate.
Yeah.
I think you go.
I think we were saying this about Adam Bandt. Adam Bandt made a lot of things about him, not about the party. And like Dutton being rejected, I feel like Adam just totally led them down the wrong path.
Yeah, I think they need to decide what they want to do, because it takes a lot of resources to run candidates in every seat. We've seen how you can spend a lot of money on that with Trumpet of Patriots. It's a lot of resources, and for not very good results typically, unless you're one of the major parties. And I keep wondering if they'd be better to just focus on the Senate, because at the moment they've got the balance of power in the upper house. And you can see here in this chart how the blue line is the lower house, and the yellow-orange line is the Senate. So they maintained their share for that pretty much, but just so they lost in the lower house.
Yeah.
So I think they really need to go and look at their leadership and think about what they want to do and what they can do.
Yeah. Yeah.
And because they got all those lower house seats back in the day, and I think that the leadership haven't really thought this. So I think this comes back to what's their positive vision for the future? Like, what are the Greens on about now?
To me, before I saw the light and became a bit more aware, the Greens were always the one that made the trouble but didn't do anything, and who always could have done something but stopped, and they wanted the perfect and didn't accept the good. And like they said, like, you know what, they're like the altruistic little happy angels that really want things to be perfect, and they never are. Like, myself personally, I've never thought the Greens were organised, and I definitely have seen he has been politicking a lot more than, well, they've all been politicking more than leading and actually getting results. So I sadly don't. I feel like there's a place. I feel like we definitely need them, but I don't have any confidence in them.
So I just think there's a consistent theme with all of the parties that they aren't articulating their vision for the future. I used to know what the Greens stood for when Bob Brown was head of them.
Yes.
They were all about the environment. They're
Yeah.
all about the environment. They're about the environment. They would be a bit about other social issues, but
Yeah.
pretty much about the environment plus a couple of social issues, and that was what they were on about. Now,
Yeah.
I'm like, what are they on about? I have no
Yeah.
idea. And I think that's one of the things that happened under Adam Bandt. So I'm hoping that, they can get an idea and get some focus,
I
because I
hope
think
so.
they
There's
do
some
something
great people have
useful.
joined them, haven't they? I've seen people that I even know have joined the Greens, and they really want to do great things. So maybe that's what they need, a new leader to give them that new direction.
Hmm. And I always just remember back in the day under Gillard where they stopped the they stopped some legislation because it wasn't perfect, and I think that sort of sums them up. That's what you were talking about.
Like
Um,
housing last year.
yeah,
That would have been fantastic for so many people. Yes, not as many as they wanted, but at least we would have gotten a start on on delivering that promise. But it was just heartbreaking. And I feel like there's too much, like the young guy, it's terrible that I don't know his name, but the one with all the properties that keeps saying that people can't afford properties, like you just sort of, they were making it about them and not the party. And I feel like the election this year has really shown you need to be about us, not about yourself. So
yeah.
hopefully, maybe that's the change.
Hmm. Anyway, so they didn't do as well as they'd hoped, but they
Yeah.
still hold the balance of power. So Labor won the House of Reps,
Yeah.
quite an astonishing level. So that was really interesting. And this is the numbers as at like 6:30 tonight on Sunday.
Oh, wow.
And then, of course, Dutton lost his seat, which
And to
I
who?
enjoyed.
Like, not just to anybody, to this amazing woman.
I love it. But it's really interesting about this. As somebody who's watched campaigns for years, like she has turned up every time and campaigned. She's worked the local area. She's gotten to know people,
Yeah.
and eventually it pays off.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
this is what you were just saying. This is making it about them, not her.
Yeah. Well, she didn't come when I read about her, which you've got to give us the 3-minute win about her, but she's not the one that's come out to tell her story. Other people have come out to say how amazing she is, which is great, right? But can you give us the 3-second story about Ali France?
So, Ali France is she's somebody who is disabled. She lost a limb in an accident, and that's when she suddenly realised that the world is not kind to people with disabilities. So she became a disability activist. So she had a long career before that. I think it was marketing and PR and comms. Just saying.
Not an
And
accident. She won then, maybe, Kate.
just saying. But and she stood, I think she stood the first time 3 elections ago.
Yes.
So this is her third rodeo.
Yeah.
And she didn't do too well. She did better the next time, and she finally won. So I think it was the confluence of the Dutton factor. I don't think Dutton helped himself. Do you remember when we had that cyclone?
Yes. And he left.
And he flew to Sydney for a fundraiser dinner
And
in the
just
middle
to
of a
left.
cyclone.
Yep.
Oh my God. So, I just think, that was a really tone deaf thing for him to do.
Well, interesting because Morrison did that with Hawaii when the fires were on. So maybe that's where Australians draw the line. When you don't stay in the country or electorate that you're supposed to represent when they're going through hell.
When there's a natural disaster. Anyway, so, that was an interesting, so I think that played into it a lot, but I think just her working the area, building the networks, this is all of the basics of campaigning that she just ticked all the boxes for. She's been door knocking that area for the last decade. She and her volunteers. She's been doing stuff in the local area. So, this is actually, I think, I think it just reinforces the thing that you were saying about making it about them, not about you.
Yeah.
And one of her sons recently passed away due to leukemia,
And her
and
ex-husband passed away 6 months before that. Like,
yeah,
so
yeah,
she and her son have had a really heck of a 12 months.
yeah. But she felt that he really wanted her to proceed. But
Yeah.
it's just pretty interesting. But it's also I just love. One of the things I like about her is she became a disability activist, and that was one of her things, but she said, I need to be there for the people of Dixon, not just as a disability advocate. So I think that's an interesting example that really illustrates what you were just talking about.
And of course I'm going to say, I also think women seem to be really understanding that need to do the work to connect to get the results. They're not making they seem to be the ones that, like, you look at the Teals community independents. They all did exactly what you said. They went and started the work, and if they didn't win, they came back. And that whole thing about working the system, not joining a party to get your face on somewhere to win something. So it is that grassroots. And we do like that story as Australians, and we do appreciate, in communication, we say you need to do things 3 times before you even get any cut through. She's really worked that system. So I feel like these are people that women understand that probably a little bit more inherently better than men, but they're definitely playing it out better. Like, they really get that fact that you've got to do that work, and it's okay, and it's going to be slow, and we can't be everything to everybody, even though in our own lives we try to be. So yeah, it's really great to watch. I'm so happy she won. So
Yeah,
happy. So
yeah. I
happy
was
we lost.
I was happy to see her win. I was happy to see him lose.
Yeah.
It was a win. It was a win-win for me.
And me.
But even on that, my own electorate, which is the electorate of Berowra in the north of Sydney, that is a safe Liberal seat. It always has been, and the margin shrank to very close between Liberal and Labor. And
Wow.
the Labor candidate, who looks about 16, I swear he looks so youthful. That might mean that I'm getting older. It might mean he genuinely looks young.
No, he looks young, obviously.
He looks like a baby anyway, but he's run at the last 3 elections. So there's been a couple of electoral redistributions that have brought in some people from another electorate who basically a large Chinese community. But he's turning up every year and recontesting and doing the work. So I think, you can see that there's things that you can do in the local area to build your profile, connect with people and stuff to gradually build your share of the vote.
I think that we should use that almost even as a barometer to authenticity, because so many people lose and you never see them again. In the next election, you see a different face. Whereas these people who really do put the decade of work in really do deserve to have that success, and because they really have shown that dedication. It's interesting you said that, because Dan Illick, It's Not a Race account there's also a Chinese version where it's actually written out in Chinese. So that would be interesting to watch for the next election. Obviously, something they're recognising.
Yeah, well, there was actually a really funny moment during the campaign where I think it was Jane Hume from the Liberals. She made a joke about China, and they were courting the Chinese vote and literally lost it in that moment. So, was a really racist comment. And she just didn't realise it was racist because, white people often don't. But everybody else was just like, oh, whoa. And I've got a lot of people of Chinese background in my life, and they were all just messaging me going, oh my God. So
just say nothing, Good. I'm glad when they show their true face, believe them.
Yeah, it was funny. It was a funny moment. Anyway, so Labor won, and hilariously, while you were sleeping, they've started a major factional fight. So it's very on brand for them. It's all the things I love. So Ed Husick got punted from the front bench, and Richard Marles, who's the is the deputy PM, was called a factional assassin for doing it. But one thing that Ed did say, which I do tend to agree with, that he thinks it was largely because he's speaking out on behalf of the people of Gaza with this genocide and starvation that the Israelis are perpetrating on the people there, and he thinks that had a lot to do with it. But anyway, it's just so on brand for Labor to win an election and then have a factional fight, brawl in public on TV. It was on Insiders this morning, and it was like cat fight.
But the Dems did the same thing. Well, they lost the election, but they still, instead of sort of going, let's get together and figure out what's happened, they all started to go, oh, they did the wrong thing, and we've stuffed. Like, what don't they understand? And this is a win. Mind you, Ed Husick, he's amazing. He's a real performer. He's not just a talker. So it's really disappointing to see them. I mean, Albo did the same thing to Tanya Plibersek last election, right? He took her, he didn't give her education, which she knew backwards, forwards, upside down. He gave her the environment. Like, you know, it's not nice. It's
factional. It is factional. So, you know, it's what happens in the Labor Party. But one thing I will say about Ed, now I do love the guy. He's a really good human being, but he has been particularly underwhelming in his ministry. So I just really felt that
oh no, fair enough, Kate.
He should be punted. But on the other hand, I reckon Richard Marles should just go join the Liberal Party because he's so far right, you know. So I don't know why he's in the Labor Party.
He doesn't even look like a Labor person, does he? To me, he's always looked like a Lib. You're so right. You're always right, but you're so right.
I messaged some people about that and then said it. I think I said it on Blue Sky this morning. I was like, he should just go join the Liberal Party.
Well, everybody seems to be doing it right now. Why shouldn't he?
Yeah, he could even run for leader.
Yeah.
I hear they need one.
Get it. In this current environment, he'd probably get it.
All right. Moving on. So this is how the Senate looks at the moment. Well, there's some rats and mice below this on this page, but the bulk of it is Labor's got 28, Libs have got 26. The Greens hold the balance of power, so the Greens are still important.
Yeah.
And you know, Labor is going to have to form a relationship with them and be able to get stuff through. And I think if the Greens hold stuff up and not going to let it through, then it's going to be really interesting to see what happens. You know, I can remember back into that Gillard government where she was negotiating with the Greens and a couple of independents, and she got more legislation through in that term than had ever been done before. It'll be interesting to see if Albo can do the same thing with such deftness.
Yes, it will. No comment. Let's just see. Yeah. I'm not going to prophesy. I hope so. I don't think he's as open or as clever as she was.
Yeah, well, we'll see. We'll see. But the Greens are still important in the Senate, and they will be able to block stuff and they will be able to wave stuff through.
Which is why it's even more important for them to get it together and really figure out their direction.
Yeah.
Because they have such an important part, and it's such a great opportunity to really redefine themselves.
I would love them to just be able to accept moving stuff towards goodness instead of it being perfect, because that's always been their way, in my opinion.
My life challenge, and I agree. Best way to live.
So now on to Trumpet of Patriots, or Trumpet of Irrelevancy, as I like to call them. So for a spend of about $60 million, they got 1.87% of the House of Representatives votes and 2.55% of the national votes, but also failed to secure a seat. glorious result. I am so
And
happy.
43 million last time for one seat.
Just,
So we've got $100 million. That should be criminal. That should
yeah,
be a criminal offence.
yeah. Anyway, and the text messages got up my nose, so and Nancy's nose, so we'll talk about that in a minute. But I was so glad, and I used to leave his ads running on YouTube while I went and made coffee and stuff, so he had to pay for them. I hate him.
Let's remember that for next election. That's a great way to use the funds. Yeah.
Well, and the interesting thing, if you just look at this picture here, you can get a sort of an idea of the kind of people that are signed up to that party. Like, there's all the blonde hair, there's all the tan people. So it's an interesting snippet of people, and it doesn't look like there's many people of colour in their ranks.
Well, for me, when I saw that ad with the blonde woman, the blatantly racist, she was basically saying we want a white Australia. When I saw that ad, after being feeling like I wanted to be physically sick, I thought to myself, please God, let this be the nail in the coffin and not the fire in the wood oven, like the flame in the wood oven, because that was just deplorable. And I hope that's why they lost. I hope that's why they didn't even get that one seat.
Well, the other thing that, they just lied. They lied in this in their ads. Like, they were saying, oh, we want free education. Like, Clive voted against free education back in the day. Like, he never wanted it.
But this is the world that politics lives in, Kate, isn't it? Not just in Australia. They just say whatever they want to say for the day. Nothing's ever checked. Nothing's ever verified. Like in Blue Sky, everybody verified. Like so many of your posts, or people that go, this is the truth, or like you went out and found that document. In life, we're doing that, but in the public sphere, in media, journalists, they aren't going out and fact checking, going blatant lie. So they're lying with impunity.
A lot of the time, I feel the media are somewhat complicit in this, because all they do is take the press releases and just regurgitate them.
Yeah. And they don't, I mean, you've got a lot of knowledge, but I have fingers that look for information. So, you don't always have to have inherent knowledge, but you can go and find the truth. Can't you?
I Google stuff all the time, so. But a lot of the journalists don't seem to be able to do that. So in my opinion, a lot of the journalists are really just stenographers. They're not doing journalism. And so, this is I think this is a big part of the decline of journalism. But anyway, but trumpet of irrelevancy, I hope they're gone.
Me too. But he lives in his own echo chamber. He's not listening.
Well, I think he's kind of lost hope now too, because he's had 2 bad results in a row. So hopefully next time he won't spend $60 million on something stupid. I just think about that $60 million, if he'd put it into a charitable donations, he could have done good with that $60 million. Instead, he just wasted it. So
imagine how many people that would have helped.
Yeah.
Disgusting.
And if you put it into a trust, that would gather money and you could just use the income. You wouldn't even have to use the capital. Anyway, just now, speaking of bad actors, and even worse than Clive and his Trumpet of Patriots is Advance Australia, which are basically a group that is I love this line that Zali Steggall had, Advance isn't grassroots, it's gasroots. So it's basically the Mineral Council of Australia, a bunch of Liberal operatives, and, Gina Rinehart plus a bunch of other people masquerading as a grassroots organisation and then funding other fake grassroots organisations. So it's really bad, and we need to start to think about how we're going to protect ourselves against these kind of bad actors.
Well, I think exposing them is one thing. And like we were talking about the movement last time, I'm trying to find what's the name of what's that group? Not the Atlas, the Atlas group.
Atlas Network, who
The
also I
Atlas
think
Network.
fund them a bit too, fund Advance.
So yeah, yeah. So they're definitely in that, and they all need to be exposed, and laws need to be put in place to stop it because it's not. It's so important that it not get started. There's no point. Like, isn't that what we do? We let them all do the thing, and then they go, "Oh, they're bad." Well, just let's not let this stuff happen. Let's put that transparency in. I'm a big one for voting with my dollars, and yes, it really hurts not to shop on Amazon, but you know what? I survived. I'm good. But I Baker's Delight. I love the lady that runs Baker's Delight in our little local shopping centre. But they funded Advance. They donated money to Advance,
Yeah,
and
I haven't
I
bought
hate
anything
that.
from them since I found that out.
Yes, same. And I explained it to her, and she didn't even know, of course, but it's her business, so it's a really. But I think the fact that she called it out, and she's been really. I like there's been a few clips of her in the election, pre-election, really calling this stuff out to the journalist's face, and you watch the journalist, and you can see that they're dying inside because they're like, "Oh my God, she said it," but you can't unsee it then once she said
Well,
it.
I loved something that she said the other day. She was on a news show and she was sitting on a high chair facing the journalist. I can't
Yes,
remember who the journalist was.
no, me
And
neither.
they were like, you're one of the Climate 200 funded teals. And she said, why don't you talk about the Gina Reinhart funded liberals or something like that? And it's just like, if we're going to label everybody, let's label everybody.
Yep.
Let's not just label one group, let's label every single group and maybe make them wear, like the racing car drivers where they have all the brands that sponsor them on their shirts.
But I think we should do that. I think it should be law that if you've got a donor, every single donor should be literally shown every single time. Because then, number one, the people that donate that think they're doing it, in the night, in the dark of night, they will think twice. But also, people can then know who is truly funding these people. But I think that should be one of our petitions as well. I think we should have that transparency. I think donation in this country is very American, right?
Well, not American yet. Anyway, um,
Yet.
I might just cover this quickly. This is a good piece by Annabelle Crabb,
Love the
and the
piece.
thing I like about it was the picture that they've got illustrating it is basically Penny Wong, who's towards the end of her career, Michaela Cash, who's in a party that won't give her a Guernsey, and if they did, she probably would be terrible because she I do
She's
not believe
terrible.
I do not believe she's a competent person,
No.
and a woman who is also not given much chance. So, like the fact that they've said women of the future, that Annabelle said women of the future, but those are the only three women they could put. I was just like, the disconnect there is just crazy.
Totally agree. I feel like I actually commented on something yesterday about this too, where, like, I know the Met Gala, I get it, people love it, but I feel like we live in a time where you have a platform, you have a voice, you have eyeballs looking at your stuff. It's your duty to call things out and be honest about this moment. And, she had the same. I mean, they could have added three other women to this, still had these three women and added to them. But, I mean, Ali, that we were just talking about,
I know.
why isn't she in the middle of there? Like, I feel like, I feel like media being the institution that it is, and their funding model, right? Like, look at who's paying for media in Australia. That institution doesn't want to let go of these institutions because they're very comfortable playing together.
Mm.
They're very
It's
uncomfortable with
it's
the
like
newcomers.
it's like Insiders.
Yes.
In
Yep.
Insiders, the ABC TV program,
Yep.
they're
Yep.
all journalists. They're not insiders. They're journalists. They're
Yep.
not inside anything. They're inside their newspapers or what media outlets.
And they've shown to be not objective or not unbiased.
Yeah.
So, you know, you can be both. I do love that message that it is female, and I like that they used our corporate colour in that, if I'm purely aesthetic.
Yeah.
But I feel like I totally agree that we've got to have the conversation about the real sort of leadership that's coming through. But maybe that's why, I mean, that's a question for another day. Is media journalism as it is now, does it have to go away, like the Libs have to go away, for all the new stuff to start to happen, or can they really change in this moment?
Well, I think the interesting thing is that the News Corp media, so the Murdoch media, had basically zero impact on this election.
Yeah.
So that's an interesting
Despite
thing.
their efforts, Kate.
I know, and I think that, you know, we've talked about doing a whole episode about the media in Australia and starting to pull it apart so that people can start to understand it. I think that'd be a really good one to do.
Let's. Back in 2 weeks. Well, I think, you know, the other thing too is I think there was so much different, there so many ways you can get information this election. And I think a lot of people definitely came to ask me questions, or I shared links because people were like, you should stop being political. And I'm like, you know what? You don't have to read it. I'm just putting it there. Like, little did they know it was not going to stop. It was a start. But I shared a lot of information that sort of like tried to leave the breadcrumbs for people to have a look. And I have had wonderful comments. And I've had great comments about our first 2 episodes as well, from women who, particularly women, men watch it but don't say anything to me. But the women who all said, I never thought I didn't know what I didn't know, and I've never seen it explained like that, and now I need to know more.
That's great.
Yeah, amazing. That's exactly why we do this. And I think there were so many other tubes coming out and places where the lies couldn't live that people consumed that more than they consumed traditional media.
Well, the interesting thing that I noticed was the young folks were consuming traditional media, so ABC live stream, but on TikTok on election night. So
Yes.
they don't turn on a TV to watch it, they just watch it on their phones. So
Yeah,
people
there
are
was a lot more
starting
live,
to,
wasn't there?
yeah. So, you know, thinking about the new media world is going to be important for the future, and the parties are going to have to get their heads around it, and they won't be able to sign off every tweet.
Well, also too, I think the young people sound so old.
Young
Nancy
people.
Joan talking here. The young people, this is their time, and these are their elections they're going to vote in. So if they're not engaged in that space, they create their own content, and then they vote for the people that connect with them. And we'll definitely see that again in the next election, because they're seasoned now. Like, you look at the Abby Chatfields and all the people that were on Love Boy Island or whatever those, they're all now going, hang on a minute, I can't buy a house. Poverty's crazy. Why is the world turning on people? They're definitely in that space talking about politics. So if they're not there, I say this, I've said this for my first social media presentation, and I say this every time I talk about communication. If you're not there and talking with people, they're talking about you. So if you're not in that space, the conversation is still being had. You're just not part of it.
Yeah.
It's my nose,
Yeah.
it's my sinus, my airplane sinus infection's kicking in.
I feel for you. I do. It's
all good.
so horrible. It's so horrible.
Trying to make sure there's nothing visual.
We'll be finished
so let's
soon.
go. Let's go, girls. Let the women lead the way. But let's
let women be in charge for a change.
Oh, please.
Much better that way.
I'm
It'll be
telling
fine.
you, 50 years. Look in Europe, Kate. So many European leaders, not just in political leaders, but World Bank and the IMF, and all those, like, they're women. They're women. It's great. It's our time, chicks. It's our time. Bravo,
Anyway,
Kate.
this is thanks to Trumpet of Patriots, aka Trumpet of Irrelevance. We've started a campaign to stop this kind of intrusive advertising during election campaigns without explicit user consent. So there is a QR code on the screen. There is a link there that you can go to, and these slides will be up on our website so that you can find them. And there is also a post on our website
And
about this.
I'll pin this link to every social media page that we've got at the top, so it can be found easily.
Excellent. Thank you, Nancy.
Thank you, Kate.
So our media recommendations are the same ones we gave last time because we just want to reinforce them. So I'll whiz through them pretty quickly. So it's the Sunday Shot. If you're tired of insiders, they're not really insiders anyway, the Sunday Shot, give them a go. The Klaxon, independent media, quite sensible, good bloke, give him a whirl too. Dan Ilic, he's very funny, he's very political, and he's also a good human being too. Give him a whirl too.
Yes.
And the good news, Nancy, I had to do this all on my own, and I'm not as good at good news as you, but I found some.
Beautifully.
I found some. So this is Valerie the Dachshund, who got lost 500 and odd days ago on Kangaroo Island off the southern coast of Australia. Her owners were there visiting and she ran away and wouldn't come back. She has been living wild on the island since, and she kept getting caught in the wildlife cameras, and they realized she was still alive, and they finally found her and they brought her home. So that was a happy ending for all concerned. Although I do get the feeling she was kind of living her best life on the island.
Yeah, she doesn't look unhappy, does she? I think you're right. I think she was like, check this out. A whole island's my playground. No doors, no fences, no lead.
And she looks quite well fed, so she was obviously doing okay. So just
do you think she was adopted by a family of rodents?
No,
Large rodents?
I'm pretty sure she ate the rodents.
Yes. This made me so happy because when she got lost, I thought, oh my God, I would die. Nearly 2 years. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Thanks,
So
Kate.
that was the good news story. I thought that was sensible. There's our campaign again. There's our QR code.
Can I just say something, Kate, about doing this? And this is why I love you and we are so aligned. Like, I truly believe that we can make a change. I truly believe that we can all have our voices heard. And this is the first of many things that hopefully we'll share that, we can do this. And the fact that you did this and it's just going so well, it's just, we can really make change, and nothing's impossible in this crazy world. I know it feels sad and bad, but it can only get better, really.
I agree, and that's why we're doing this, and it's always a pleasure to see you, Nancy. Thanks so much, and thanks for making the time when you're not feeling 100%. I do appreciate it.
Absolute pleasure. Here we go on, and we're both back in the same country in less than 2 weeks. And stay tuned, folks, for what's coming up.
Excellent. Thanks everybody.
Kate.
Nice to see you. Bye.
See you next time.